To today's session, data analysis with Python and PandasAI. My name's Etty. I'm part of the marketing team here at StayAhead. We'll give it another minute or so for people to join. I can see a few more people filtering in. And then I will be handing over to Stuart here, who is our lead web development and programming trainer, who will be taking you through today's session. There's just a couple of housekeeping bits that I want to run through with everyone. Apologies if you were on this morning's Coding with AI session. Will be a bit repetitive. But after I go, I promise Stuart has a totally new session for you. So you'll notice you all came on mute. Please do stay that way. It just means that everyone can nice and clearly hear Stuart as he's talking. If you do have any questions, there is a little question panel box up in the top right-hand corner of your screen. If you want to pop those in there, if they're technical questions, you can't see us, you can't hear us, I will be sort of handling those in the background. But otherwise, if they're about the content of the session, we're going to be doing Q&A at the end, where we'll run through any questions like that. The webinar is being recorded. You'll receive a follow-up email from us on Monday with a link to that recording. So you can watch again. You can forward on to any colleagues if you think they might find it interesting as well. We like to say give us a follow on LinkedIn. We're very active over on there. We share lots of details about any new courses that we have available, other sessions and webinars like this one. So you can keep up to date and sort of be the first person to hear about those kind of things. The session's going to last about 30 minutes today, and then, as I said, we will leave about 10-15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I shall hand you over to Stuart's capable hands for the rest of today's session.
Thanks, Eddie. Welcome, everyone. I can't see faces or see a list of names or anything, but I'll just assume that there's a large sort of stadium-like audience for our session. So I'm Stuart. I deliver coding courses for StayAhead, focusing on our three main languages, so Python, Java, and JavaScript. But there are a lot of courses around the edges of that, including a data analysis course with Python, which this webinar is sort of centered around that. I should say that I am not certainly not a mathematician. I'm not a data analyst or a data scientist. We teach Python to sort of intermediate/advanced level, and we do a introduction to Python and data analysis course, which focuses mainly on looking at data and trying to generate insights from that. And so this topic is closely associated with that. So we're going to talk about PandasAI, which is one of many tools in this space. We'll talk about what it is exactly. We'll look at the installation and setup steps that are necessary. I'll do a live demonstration of PandasAI that is geared towards the sort of content that you would find in our data analysis course. We don't teach Python and data analysis with PandasAI for reasons that I think will become clear as I go along. But as AI is becoming sort of infiltrating every area, data analysis is no different, and consequently, people are going to be looking at what is available in that space, and this is just one of those things. I'll finish with a brief discussion about the pros and cons of AI-driven data analysis, whether it's with PandasAI or some other tool. So PandasAI is a Python package which is built on top of another Python package called Pandas. Pandas is third-party Python code that has been around for years. It is designed for analyzing tabular data. It's very, very popular, and it is the focus of our Intro to Python and Data Analysis course. So PandasAI builds on top of Pandas to exploit AI to, in theory, to simplify the process of cleansing your data, doing your analysis, doing your visualization, and so on. And of course, as it's AI, it enables one to do that using natural language. So we can provide plain English prompts rather than having to know Python syntax or the Pandas API. Now I've included a sneaky question mark in the line here about no need to master Python syntax and Pandas API, because in my view, I think that there is a case to be made for knowing at least something about Python and having some understanding of Pandas. And I hope that through the course of the demonstration, you will understand why I'm suggesting that. Of course, PandasAI requires access to a large language model, and that can be either remote, which is more likely at this stage, or it could be local. But it depends on what you have available to you in that regard. But I think for the most part, most people at this stage will be using PandasAI with a remote LLM through a provider like OpenAI. So to get up and running with PandasAI, you first need to install Python. And as we sit here today, PandasAI requires Python version 3.8 through 3.11. It's a bit of a watch because the latest version of Python is 3.14. So we would be hoping that PandasAI is updated pretty soon to make it compatible with the more recent versions of Python. One of the, as I'm sure those of you who are sort of technical will know, one of the important things about using third-party tools is ensuring that they are maintained and kept up to date. So the fact that PandasAI can't be used at this stage with Python 3.12 or 3.13 or 3.14 is a bit of a watch. Python is free to download and install, so there's no sort of requirement for a subscription or to pay any fee or anything like that. Once you've installed Python, you then need to install PandasAI, and that's done using pip. So pip is the Python package installer that you get when you install Python. And PandasAI is free to install in the same way that Python is free to install. If necessary, you may also have to install an LLM extension, and the LLM extension that you have to install will depend on the provider that you are using. For the demonstration, I'm using OpenAI, so I have a subscription to OpenAI, and I'm connecting PandasAI with that. Okay, and of course, OpenAI, like all providers, has a range of sort of subscriptions that you can sign up to that provide access to different models and different volumes of usage and so on. Okay. Now, as for the setup, this is really the only bit that requires some Python knowledge, and I would imagine for those of you non-technical, this is going to look like gobbledygook, but it's pretty boilerplate. So it doesn't really, you don't really need to understand it, but there is some setup required. So just to run you through it very briefly, we're importing Pandas AI, and we are importing the LLM extension here called Light LLM to get me connected to my OpenAI subscription. I'm then creating an LLM object here, and I have to specify my OpenAI API key. So I have to have signed up for an account. Once I do that and I pay them a whatever fee is required for the particular subscription, I then get an API key which I can use here to create the LLM object. Now, for what it's worth, I'm on the cheapest possible OpenAI subscription. So I think I've paid them $5, which is more than enough to cover what I'm doing here. I also have to specify which model I want to have do the work in the background here. So I'm using GPT 5.6 Sol, which is at the higher end of the models that OpenAI provide. And depending on the type of analysis that I want to do, will dictate which model I choose. So if it's pretty basic stuff, as per the demonstration today, I could get away with a lower grade model. I could get away with GPT-4 or something like that. But if the analysis that I want to do is more complex and requires sort of deeper reasoning, then I'm going to need something more sophisticated, like GPT 5.6 in this case. But you can swap it out depending on what you're trying to do. Finally, I then configure PandasAI with my LLM object so that it has all the tools it needs to attempt to solve my analysis problems using the LLM. So the obvious, or perhaps not so obvious point here is that if you are using a remote LLM provider, as I am here, then obviously we're having to send some data to that remote provider in order for it to give us what we need. It's slightly complicated, but if your LLM is remote, the analysis doesn't actually happen remotely. Rather, we send some data off to OpenAI in this particular case. It will look at the question that we've asked. It'll look at a sample of the data, and then it will effectively determine what code needs to be executed and send that back to us. And then we'll execute that code locally. So the analysis happens locally, but the determination of what that analysis looks like is what happens remotely. And we'll dive into that a little bit. We'll see what that looks like in just a few minutes. Now, once you've done the setup, which as I say is pretty boilerplate, then it's a case of reading in some data. So your data can be in pretty much whatever format you want. It could be CSV or Excel. It could be a relational database table, JSON, whatever sort of format you happen to have your data in. And once you have read your data into a PandasAI data frame, DF is short for data frame, The data frame has a method called chat, which you can then pass a plain English prompt in order to ask questions of your data. Okay. PandasAI will package up a prompt which it will send to the LLM. The LLM will endeavor to work out what code needs to be executed, send that code back to you, and it will be executed locally in order to arrive at a result. Okay. But it's not just analysis. We can use PandasAI to cleanse the data and also to perform visualizations as well. Okay. And again, I'll demonstrate all of that. So the setup is pretty simple. It wouldn't take you more than 5 or 10 minutes to get installed and set up. And so all that's left is for a demonstration. So let's jump into that. Now I have a Jupyter notebook running here, and I've added the boilerplate code already. And those of you not familiar with Jupyter Notebook, Jupyter Notebook is effectively an editor for Python code that runs in the browser. And there are reasons why it works that way, but it's a bit beyond the scope of the session, and I'm sure some of you will know it already. So I've already imported PandasAI. I've already created my LLM object with my API key. There's a little bit of additional code here. This cell here reads my API key from a text file. You'll forgive me, I'm honorable people that I've no doubt you are. I didn't want to share my API key with all of you, so I just put it in a file behind the scenes. And then finally, I've configured PandasAI with my LLM, so we should be ready to go. Now I have a file here, a CSV file called Titanic CSV that we use in our data analysis course as a sort of a standard data set that we use to do some cleansing and analysis and visualization. So I'm going to use that here. I'm going to start by reading it into a data frame. So we'll say df pai dot read CSV. I'm going to read that file. I can read it with a relative path because it's in the same directory. And one of the nice things about PandasAI is because it builds on top of Pandas, the PandasAI data frame has all of the same attributes and methods that a Pandas data frame does. So I'm able to if I know Pandas, I'm able to sort of verify or critique the results that the AI gives me by writing a bit of straightforward Pandas code, and that's really nice. And it's for me, it's one of the reasons why PandasAI is a good choice in this space, because it's so seamless for switching between using the AI tool and using the tools that I'm already familiar with. So I might start by using the chat method to show me a sample of the data. So I might say, show me a sample of 5 records. Okay. Now, of course, I have to know a little bit about the structure of the code required here, but fundamentally, I'm providing a plain English prompt to ask questions of the data. Now, when I execute that cell, it takes a little while. You might have noticed that there was a little asterisk appear inside the square brackets on the left-hand side there, and that's because, of course, the LLM is remote. So PandasAI is having to create the prompt in the background, send it up to OpenAI's servers for it to be processed and the code to be sent back to me. But I'm getting a response here. It looks a little gobbledygook. and that's because it's a data frame response object that we're getting back, but it has a value attribute. And so if I want to see the result in a cleaner, more sort of human readable way, I can just chain a dot value on the end of that and run it again. And this time I ought to get something that looks friendlier, easier to read. Okay. Now, even though I asked for a sample of 5 records, it's actually given me the first 5 records, which is not quite what I wanted. So I might try changing that. Let's try saying I want a random sample of 5 records instead, and give it another go. Actually, it is. Excuse me. It is random. I think it may have been random before. The passenger IDs are random. So that's pretty good. Now, just to give you a flavor of what this sort of analysis would look like if I know pandas. Okay, so I want you to see a sort of a side-by-side comparison of using the AI tool versus what if I know pandas? What if I know Python and I know a bit of pandas? How difficult is this stuff? Well, if I want a random sample of five records with pandas without the AI, all I would have to do is call a method called sample, and it will produce the same result. Now notice it's much faster because we're not having to package up a prompt and send it up to OpenAI's servers. Okay. What if I want to know, let's do something else. Let's say I want to know how many records there are. So I might say, how many records are there? And we'll do a dot value on the end of that. So I'm expecting a single digit response, and that's what I get. If I know, again, if I know pandas, I know that in order to achieve that, I could just length the data frame and get the same result. Okay, fine. One of the things that an analyst or an engineer will typically want to do before they start analyzing the data is sort of check the data and make sure that it doesn't have any obvious issues before starting to do the analysis. So, for example, I might want to know whether there are missing values. So I might do something like how many. Well, in fact, before we do that, let's check the data types of the columns, because if, for example, a column has numeric data in it, like the age column here, but some of those values are invalid or corrupt, then pandas may read the pandas AI may read the column as if it's a text column rather than a numeric column, and that will prevent me from doing sort of statistical analysis on that. So one of the very first things that an analyst or an engineer is likely to do is check the data types. So we might say, what are the data types of the columns? Again, we'll put a value on the end of that. So prompt goes off to OpenAI, and eventually, it's a little sluggish, but eventually I get a response showing me the data types for all of the columns. So I could look for any obvious issues there. I can see, for example, that the age column is a double, so that's a floating point number. That looks pretty good. Likewise, fair, and so on. But if I know pandas, how do I get the data types of the columns? Well, I would know that every data frame has a dtypes attribute that gives me that information. Okay. What if I want to know if there are missing values? I might say, are there missing values in any of the columns. Again, patience is a virtue. So PandasAI gives me a very nice output here. It tells me that the cabin column has 687 missing values, the age column has 177 missing values, and so on. So that's quite nice. The output is good. But if I know pandas, then I would know that every data frame has a method called isNA, or is null. And I would know that returns a mask that I can then sum in order to obtain the same information. So what you'll see, or what I hope you are noticing here, is that for doing relatively simple things, chatting with an AI tool like this is actually more verbose than doing these tasks, assuming that I know a bit of Python and a bit of pandas. Okay, but you'll see that as the complexity rises, that starts to tip in the other direction. Okay. Okay. What if it is not the case that PandasAI always produces the right result, of course, and sometimes a lack of knowledge about Python and about the way that pandas works will cause or may cause problems. So let's say, for example, I want to fill in these missing age values with the mean age or the average age. Now, that's not something that I would advocate in practice, but just as an example. So I might do df chat. We'll say fill in the missing age values with the mean age. Okay. Now the AI will do this, but if this is a really good example of where a beginner or someone who doesn't have any fundamental knowledge about Python or pandas is likely to start running into problems. So on the surface, it looks like PandasAI has done the job. I can see, for example, that this record here, which previously would have had a missing age, now has the mean age. And I know that because it has digits after the decimal point. Now, so that looks good, but it's misleading. Okay, it looks like PandasAI has filled in missing age values. What it has actually done is created an entirely new data frame with all the missing age values filled in. But the original data frame, the one that I'm doing my analysis against, it hasn't been modified. It would be very easy for somebody to miss that, particularly somebody who doesn't have that fundamental knowledge. Now, we can prove that that is the case by checking again for the number of missing values. And I can see that the age column still has 177 missing values. Okay. Now, if I know enough about how pandas works, I'm going to be able to pick up on that, okay, and have the AI fix it for me. But if I don't, I'm potentially going to miss that. I'm then going to carry on doing a bunch of analysis where I assume that I've filled in missing values, but really I haven't. So that's a bit of a problem, okay. And it's an example of where having a bit of fundamental knowledge is important. What about doing some analysis? Let's do some simple analysis. Let's say how many passengers boarded at each city. This is relatively simple analysis. We're looking for a count of passengers who boarded at each of the embarkation points. And here PandasAI is doing a really good job. It takes the data, which includes only the initial of each city, and gives us the full city name. So that's really nice. But if I know a bit of pandas, it's easy enough to do that. I could say df.embarked, which is the name of the column, and then I could use a method called value counts, which gives me the same results, albeit not in quite as nice a way. Okay, you'll see that I'm getting only the initial of the city. I'm not getting the benefit of the AI working out that S stands for Southampton and so on. Okay, so the AI is doing a little more for me there, which is nice. Let's do another. What about how many passengers paid more than the average fare? I get 211. Now the analysis here is getting a little more complicated. It's still pretty simple, but it's a little more complex. And as you'll see, the actual pandas code that I would have to write to do this is starting to get a little more complicated. But it's not that much. It's not that difficult. I would have to do something like what do we want? I want to say I want to filter, don't I? So I want to say df fare is greater than df fare dot mean. So give me all the records where the fare is greater than the average fare, and then I want to grab the shape of that. I want the first value. Okay, so this is the code that somebody who knows a bit of Python, a bit of pandas would write to achieve the same result. What about some grouping? Let's do something a little more complex. We'll say group the passengers. How are we going for time? 12:30. Okay, group the passengers by class and sex. Then determine the average age, the count, and the survival count. Okay. So I want to know for passengers, male and female in first class, second class, third class, what was the average age, how many there were, and how many survived. Okay. So a little more complex, but pretty quickly the AI generates a result for me. So I can see that in first class, the average age of the women 34.6 and the men 41. The count 94 and 122, and the survival count 91 and 45. So most of the women who traveled in first class survived, according to this, and about a third of the men. Now, what would the code look like if I weren't using PandasAI, if I just using straight up pandas? Well, we'd do something like this. We'd say group by, what do we want to group by? We want to group by P class and sex. And then I'm interested in the age. I'm interested in, let's do passenger ID, and let's do survived. Those are the column names. And then I want different statistics for each column. So I'm going to have to use a method like aggregate here. And we're going to have to say for the age column, I want the mean. For the passenger ID column, I want the count. And for the survived column, make sure I don't do a typo, I want the sum. Like that, I think. Mean age, count of passengers, and a count of those who survived. So I'm getting the same data here presented in a slightly different way, but I'm seeing that the groups, first class, second class, third class, males and females, average age, total count, and number who survived. So if you do a quick scan, you'll see that the data is the same. The AI does a slightly better job than what I've done writing my code because it gives me a better column labels. My column labels don't include the stat, so it doesn't tell me that it's the mean age, for example. Now, it'd be easy enough for me to do that, but you start to see how, as the complexity grows, the amount of code that I have to write, starts to exceed the prompt that I would have to write to achieve the same thing. Okay. Let's finish with a visualization or a couple of visualizations. So let's start with a simple visualization. I'm going to say plot the distribution of passenger age. Okay. Plot the distribution of passenger age. So I want to see a histogram, effectively, of where most of the passengers sat in terms of age. And PandasAI will generate a chart. It doesn't show it to me by default, but actually if we do .value, it might. Can it show me in the browser? No. Okay, so I'm going to have to go over here, look at the exports, and there's my histogram showing the distribution of age. It's a little large. Okay, so that's pretty good. But what would it take for me to do that in code? Well, it's not terribly difficult. I would do df.age.plot, and the type of chart I want is a histogram, like that. Okay, so with a bit of knowledge, a bit of pandas knowledge, it's easy enough for me to produce something similar. Again, as the complexity grows, the amount of code that I would have to write exceeds the prompt. So if I do something a little more complicated, like let's see, plot the percentage of people who survived by class. Okay, the percentage of people who survived by class. Now this is doable. I won't do it because we're going to a bit short on time, but it's absolutely doable to write pandas code to achieve that. But it would certainly it would require me to write more code than the prompt that I've issued here. But let's take a look at that. That's this guy here. So I can see that 63% of passengers in first class survived, 47 in second, and 24 in third class, at least according to this data set. Okay. Now, of course, all of these things, you might be looking at this and thinking to yourself, well, this is all pretty simple analysis, and you'd be right, it is. But I've tried to limit it to the sort of analysis that we would do on an intro to Python and data analysis course. Okay. But PandasAI, of course, the full power of GPT-5 behind it, is capable of doing much more. So let's jump back over here to finish off then. What are the pros of using a tool like PandasAI? Well, the main selling point, I think, is that it requires little to no knowledge of Python or Pandas. One can run through the installation and the setup pretty quickly and start asking questions of the data without any knowledge of Python or Pandas. Is that entirely a pro? I'm not entirely sure. It can be used with virtually any LLM, even local ones. Okay, so if you're concerned about you know, the sending data up to a model provider, it is possible to run PandasAI with a local model. You can issue plain English instructions, of course, and queries, and in some cases, although not all cases, as I've demonstrated, it is faster than writing code. What about the cons? Well, there's the cost and the latency. Obviously, if you are using a paid-for remote LLM like OpenAI, it's going to cost you. And in some cases, talking to the AI will be slower than writing the code yourself, assuming that you have the skills to do so. There is the data privacy and security question. And just to show you very briefly, when you start using PandasAI, it will create a log file here. And the log file includes information about the data that is actually sent to the model. So the very first question that I asked of the data was to show me a sample of 5 records. Okay, that was the first chat that I issued. And it's not just that gets sent to OpenAI in this case. It sends a whole bunch of information about the data, including, in this particular case, the first 5 rows of the data. So if your data is sensitive and you don't trust OpenAI or whoever, then that may be a deal breaker for you. Okay, but it's, you know, it should be obvious that the model needs some of your data in order to be able to help you work out which code needs to be executed. So what the model then sends back is some code that gets executed against the data set locally in order to arrive at the result. So the analysis doesn't actually happen remotely, it happens locally, but some of your data still has to be shared in order for that to happen. And for a lot of people, that will be a deal breaker. But local models are starting to change that change that as an issue. Of course, there is the problem of, you know, that occurs with all AI of accuracy and hallucinations. And even though it's not something that we would do in our intro to Python and data analysis course, tools like PandasAI inevitably will struggle with deep statistical analysis. And so for me, one of the things that you should really think carefully about, as with using AI for any coding task, is do we or should we have capacity to critically analyze what the AI is producing? Do we need people who know enough Python and Pandas to be able to check, to say, well, that response from the AI looks a little dubious. How can we verify it, right? Now, it may be that you have expertise in other areas, Excel, Power BI, or whatever, so you can do your checking there. But either way, in my view, if you're using a tool like this, you should have some resource for being able to analyze it and check it. Okay, but inevitably these tools are going to start sort of, or management are going to start sort of insisting that tools like this are used. I still think it's necessary to have core Python and Pandas skills. I think that's really important, and then the AI can be used on top of that. But hopefully today I've given you a little flavor for the types of tools that are available, and sort of a bit of food for thought as to the pros and cons of using them. Okay, so I'll hand back to Etty, who can sort of wrap things up and handle questions and what have you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stuart. We have had one question come in earlier. Oh, we had another one just now. Got a few coming in, which is good. So the first question that came through said, for data sets that require cleansing, would it be better to perform data preparation up front rather than relying on PandasAI? For example, if certain attributes are missing values, would a data preparation step be a better approach, or is there a different solution you'd recommend?
I think it's okay to have I think it's okay in general to have PandasAI help you with the cleansing part. What is necessary, in my view, is an understanding of Pandas' approach to mutations, so that you know what the AI is going to do, and you can make sure that it does that cleansing properly. But I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't think you would necessarily say, well, we must do our cleansing manually and only use the AI for analysis. I wouldn't go that far, but I do think that some, fundamental understanding of the tools is helpful. Something else I was going to add to that, but it's completely evaporated from my mind.
Maybe it'll come back to you in a minute. We've had another question, which says, is it possible to see the methodology or code the tool has used to reach its answer so that you can check it?
Yeah, well, as I demonstrated at the end there, the log will show you the actual code that the model has determined should be executed locally to answer the question. But of course, that code is no good to you unless you understand it. And those of you sort of eagle-eyed will have noticed that by default, PandasAI is actually executing SQL-like code against the data set. It's not executing sort of native Pandas code. So yes, absolutely, you can see what the model is requiring be executed, and you can analyze that, but you've got to know enough to be able to work out whether or not it's valid or not. And it is possible to extract that information programmatically, so you don't have to rely on the log. You can actually grab the response in code and have it show you the last prompt that was executed, so you can see it in your notebook as you go along. Check it that way too.
Okay, perfect. This might be a similar question, but it says, is there any way to get PandasAI to show you the equivalent Pandas code so you can then use it as a tool to learn Pandas?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head if it's possible to have it. I would assume that it's possible to instruct the LLM to give you native Pandas solutions to the questions rather than the SQL sort of modified solution. I'd be surprised if it wasn't possible to do that. But as I say, you can programmatically have it show you the code that it executed as a tool to help you learn, definitely. But I would also encourage, as I did in the last webinar actually, that that you, maybe not through Jupyter Notebook, but through another platform, you could ask PandasAI, how did you arrive at this solution, and have it explained to you. I mean, I limited my prompts to sort of looking at the data quite directly, but you can prompt PandasAI and just ask it questions. Okay, so you could, for example, say, analyze this data and tell me what cleansing you think ought to be undertaken. And it will, rather than sort of give you result. It'll sort of give you a list of things that it thinks ought to be changed. So you can just ask questions of the AI inside a notebook the way you would in any other sort of AI system.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all the questions we've had for now. If anyone does have any more, please do feel free to pop them in the chat. Or I know sometimes it can be slightly overwhelming after you've had all of this information to take in. So we are happy to answer any questions sort of down the line if you come up with any tomorrow or on Monday, whenever. As I think Stuart mentioned earlier, we do have an Introduction to Python and Data Analysis course, which is a 4-day course. So it will go into a lot more depth than we have managed to do in half an hour today. But yeah, it will just help you to build those skills using Python, Pandas, all of those things, so that you can really take your knowledge to then use the AI. Thank you again for joining the webinar today. If you are interested in the training, then please do get in touch. Stuart kindly has included his work email address, so you can send him any questions directly. Or as I said, if you are interested in the training, you can find out more information on the website, or you can get in touch with our team who'd be happy to give you a full rundown and answer any questions you might have about that. As Stuart mentioned, we did run another webinar this morning, which was all around coding with AI. If you weren't able to join us and you're interested in that, then the full video will be live on our YouTube channel. So you can watch over there. And we are also running another session today. Stuart and I have been busy today. We're running another session at 2:30, which is all about ethical hacking and secure coding. So you do still have time to register for that one if you haven't had the chance already and are interested in joining us. You can do that via our website. So yeah, thanks again for joining. And we've had one more question come through, Stuart, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
So someone has just said, does PandasAI have a memory if it's feeding out to the LLM? And so if you say what cleansing steps are needed and it gives you a list, can you then ask it to action those steps?
Yes, it does. So like all agents, PandasAI maintains a context. So when you chat, you can engage in a sort of a conversation. So it will make use of a context the way that normal AI agents do. It's a bit of a blessing and a curse. So it can be a good thing, but can also be a bad thing. If you're doing a sort of a complex analysis, that history, that context can actually lead to problems. But the short answer is yes, but it's something to be a little bit careful with.
Great. Yeah, so I think that's all of the questions for now. Thanks again, Stuart, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed the session, and yeah, we'll potentially see some of you later.